City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the May My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. This kit had some really beautiful papers. This was one of my favorites. This is a Blue Fern Studios pattern paper. It's so pretty and I'm going to be using it as my background. In order to add a little bit of subtle pattern and texture to the background, I'm using the stencil that's in this month's kit, and I'm using a sponge and some heavy gesso. I'm dabbing the gesso through the stencil in a couple of places. The area that I chose to put these flowers, that's where I'm planning to put most of my embellishments. On a piece of paper this light, this is a very subtle technique. It's not easy to see these flowers in the background, but I think that it's the little details like this that makes the layout turn out the way I like it. So I thought that this would be a good addition to this layout. I chose some flowers to use on the layout. These are flowers that were included in this month's kit, and I'm using some Kitsch Flamingo Distress Oxide to give some color to the edges of the flowers. I'm going to be using the 3 light pink roses that are off to the left. I'm going to use that dark pink flower on another layout. And now I want to add some sparkle to the flowers, so I'm using some Liquitex Heavy Duty Gel Medium, and I'm applying it to the tips of the petals and the center of the flower. And now I am dipping the whole flower into some diamond dust, and I'll let that dry, and it makes the flowers super sparkly. And you can see even better on this flower that I just put the gel medium on the tips of the petals. I used to cover the whole flower with the diamond dust, and I felt that it didn't look as good as when it's only on the one area on the tips of the flowers and on the center. I spilled a little bit of my diamond dust, so I gathered it back up and put it back in the jar just to be safe. It's made of ground up glass, so you just want to be careful with it. I used some dies that were in my stash, and I cut out some tropical looking leaves, and I'm using again the Kitsch Flamingo Distress Oxide, and then I also use some picked raspberry, which is a slightly darker color, so I use that on the edges of the leaves just to have a little bit of variation in the colors of the leaf. The layout that I'm making is of some photos that my daughter took when she was on vacation in the Dominican Republic in March, and she took some really pretty pictures, and I thought that this paper and also this color scheme would go really well with those pictures that she took. I'm also going to be including some large green tropical looking leaves. For these leaves, I'm inking them with peeled paint, pine needles, and rustic wilderness distress oxides. I always feel that using more than one color rather than having a flat color, having some different shades of color, helps elements on the layout look a little bit more realistic. Someone once pointed out to me that when you look at a tree or you look at grass, you don't see just one color of green, you see lots of different colors. So I do think it looks a little bit more realistic, and then it also just makes it more interesting than looking at just a flat color. In addition to having all these different colors visible, I also want some of the original paper's color to be visible. These are all die cut from the pattern papers that are in the collection. These aren't from cardstock, so there's already a little bit of variation because the pattern paper variation to it. No matter how many coats of Distress Oxide you put on top of a piece of paper, the original color is always going to shine through. So that's why I like to use pattern paper rather than just using white paper when possible. So I thought that I would add some white splatters to the background before I start adding all of the embellishments, although I like to add white splatters on top of the embellishments as well. But I thought I would start here putting some of the splatters on top of those gessoed flowers that I made earlier. And I have some more prep work to do before I assemble my layout, so I'm going to allow these white splatters to dry on their own. I'm not going to use the heat gun on those. Now I'm going to start working on my photos. I know these don't look like photos, but I'm going to be mounting my photos on these hexagons. I cut these using my die cutting machine and some very simple dies, and I cut the hexagons in several different sizes. So I have large ones, those are going to be for my photos, and then I have the medium ones, those are also going to have some photos on them, and then I'm going to use the smaller ones with some pattern paper. So I'm attaching 2 layers of cardstock together, and that will help the photos have a little bit more dimension. But I'm not going to be using dimensional foam. I'm just going to allow these layers of cardstock to be the dimension on the page. So this is some heavy duty gel medium. I use Liquitex brand. And I like the way that works, but there's lots of other brands of gel medium out there as well. Just use whatever you have or whatever you can find at a reasonable price. You can see that I'm using an old brush. I use a lot of really old brushes in my crafting, and I'm brushing on the gel medium, and then I'm making sure that the 2 layers are pressed well together, and then I give them some time to dry. Now I'm using some Distress Oxide again, and I'm inking the edges. I am going to be putting the photos, as I said, on these larger hexagons, so I don't want to ink them when the photos are already attached. For the smaller ones, I'm inking them now, but I'm also going to re-ink them once I have the pattern paper on there. I start off with the kitsch flamingo, and then I add a few accents of the picked raspberry as well. I've already cut out my photos using those same hexagon dies, and this die has a cool border that is stitched. I kind of like that on the photos, and I'm attaching them down with some ATG adhesive. I've never tried to use gel medium to attach photos down. I'm afraid that I would make a mess with it, so I'm better off using a dry adhesive. And then, as I said, once I have the pattern papers attached to the smaller hexagons, I re-ink the edges. I think the 2 layers of cardstock and then the photo gives the photos a little bit of dimension, but doesn't add a ton of dimension to the page. Now I'm arranging these hexagons on my page. I know that I want to have them in a kind of a line going down the right side of the layout. I want to make sure that you could see those beautiful flowers on the left. And I'm using some ATG adhesive to attach them down. This gives me the option of repositioning them if I don't end up liking where I have them, but I do end up leaving them where I put them down right now. With a few little adjustments, I did slightly adjust those shapes to make sure that there was an equal amount of pattern paper from the lowest hexagon to the bottom and the highest hexagon to the top of the page. I used the foam sticker set that was in the kit this month, and I chose the word lovely, and I ended up switching that out. I'm not really sure why. I think I might have accidentally ripped it. These foam stickers are fantastic. I love the colors. I love the thickness of these foam stickers. It's an embellishment I really like a lot, but you have to really be sure when you put it down that you have the embellishment where you want it because they stick really, really well. I know sometimes I mention how certain embellishments don't stick. These are the opposite. There's a lot of very strong adhesive on the back of them. So of course you have the option of either putting a piece of paper behind them or using some powder to get rid of the stickiness or just being really sure of where you put them before you put them down, but I didn't do that. So I'm peeling this title up. It's a little cringy watching me peel it up. I remove it from the layout. Luckily, there was just a tiny little bit of damage to the paper, and I was able to cover it up with the new title, which is today. And I really like the color. I think that that color really stands out. In order to bring the navy blue to some other areas of the layout, I added some of the foam sticker hearts in navy blue. And now I'm going in with all those embellishments that I worked on earlier, and I'm spreading them around the layout. I always try to make sure that I put some of the embellishments that I use on the rest of the layout near or in a cluster around the title. I don't want the title to look like a separate entity from the rest of the page. I want it to look like it's part of the whole layout. So I do end up putting a leaf underneath the title today, and I think that that makes the whole layout look cohesive. I added some foam sentiments on the bottom of the layout underneath the largest photo. One says enjoy, one says simply divine, and I think those go really well with these photos. It was clearly a very beautiful place that my daughter went to. I've never been to DR, but I hear that it's gorgeous. I know a lot of people who either live there or have lived there or visit there often, and it looks really gorgeous. And I really like these photos that my daughter took of them. And I like with scenery photos how you can sometimes get the idea of the photo without using the whole 4 by 6 inch photo. In some cases, she took a picture of a flower, and I could make that photo very small. And I think these are the perfect kinds of photos to make them small and use them in unusual shapes. I usually have my photos in a large format. I don't like to cut things out of the background because I feel like a lot of times it's the things in the background that we'll notice years later, like changes in furniture or differences in the way that our home looked. And so I don't like to crop photos down too small if there are things in the background that I think might be interesting in years to come. I attached down all of the leaves and all the flowers using the heavy duty gel medium. I'm adding some butterflies to the layout. A lot of these were fussy cut from the pattern papers. And the pattern papers that were in this month's kit were from different collections. These are from the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Indigo Garden papers that were in the kit. They are absolutely beautiful, and I think that they're a really good combination with the Blue Fern Studio paper that I'm using in the background. I love including butterflies on my layouts. I think butterflies are just perfect for this layout. And I'm sorry if you watch my videos and you've heard this before, but I always like to pop up the butterfly wings. I put a little bit of foam on the back of each wing, and I put some adhesive going not only down the center, but on both pieces of foam. And then I press down on the center, and that makes the wings pop up a little bit. And I just love the way that that looks on the layouts. I put some pearls in the centers of the butterflies. That's another thing that I love to do. I'm using some strips of adhesive pearls. I got these from the Brad and Eyelet Outlet. They are, I believe, 3 millimeter pearls, and they come in long strips. And I use those in conjunction with single self-adhesive pearls at times, and I think it just adds a really nice touch to a lot of layouts. And you may have seen that I put a slightly larger pearl at the top of a lot of the butterflies to signify kind of its head, and then I use the smaller pearls for the rest of the body. I decided to move one of the flowers to the left of the title. I didn't like the way it was directly on top of the other flower that's at the bottom of the layout. So I moved it to the left, and that created a nice triangle that encompasses a lot of the photos and the title, and I just think that that looks a little bit better. So I had to peel it up, and I put a butterfly in that spot because it looked empty once I removed it. And when I say that one flower was directly on top of the other, I don't mean that it was literally on top. I mean that if you were to draw a straight line down from the flower at the top to the bottom, they were on the same line, and I think it looks better when the embellishments that are the same aren't like that, where they're spread around the layout. That's just a personal preference of mine. Well, I'm putting some final touches on to the layout. You saw that I put some pearls on those blue foam hearts, and now I'm adding a leaf to the flower that I repositioned, and that was the last touch on this layout, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, everybody. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you got some ideas to use with your limited edition kit and in your scrapbooking layouts. I hope that you will take a look at the description box where you'll find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You'll see all of the kits that are available this month, and then you can also purchase the kits or purchase a subscription there. I hope that everybody has a fantastic day, and I will be back again soon with another video. I'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.